Welcome to Module 2. In this module, we're going to start by talking about the keys to the perfect six-figure funnel formula product. Most marketers don't understand the role that their front-end product, their first product sold to a prospect, plays. And so we're going to start by talking about the purpose of the front-end product. Then we're going to go on to talk about what's called strategic front-end product development, how to actually develop the perfect first product that you sell to a prospect so that it fulfills its role and purpose. And then we're going to talk about how to incorporate your hook and promise into the development of this first or front-end product. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about understanding the front-end sale. So, what is the front end? Well, there are really two categories of marketing in any direct response business, and it's critical that you understand the difference between these two categories and the purpose of these two categories. The first category is what we call the front end. And the front end of your business is all of the marketing that you do with prospects to convert them into a new customer. In other words, this is all of the marketing that you're doing with individuals that have yet to purchase a product or service from you. And the goal of the front end, of course, is to turn those prospects into new raving customers. Now, the second category of marketing in a direct response business is what we call the back end. Now, the back end is all of the marketing that you do with customers, with individuals that have already purchased at least one or more products or services from you. And the objective with the back end is to deepen your relationship with those customers and generate additional transactions. There's a big difference between the front end and the back end, not only in the way you market, but more importantly, in the way you view the success of a front-end promotion and a back-end promotion. Now, we're going to be talking about that later, the difference really between the two. But for now, I really just want to drive home the overall main purpose of each. So for the front end, your goal is to generate maximum new customers. What I mean by that and why I'm sharing that, it seems kind of obvious, but is that the goal of the front end, the goal of all of the marketing that you do with prospects, with individuals that have yet to become customers, the goal is to generate maximum new customers. It's not to generate profit. The mistake that a lot of novice and new marketers make is that they don't view a difference between the front end and the back end. And they think that the entire purpose of both the front end and the back end is to generate a profit from every single transaction. This is why the typical small business owner doesn't have in their mind two categories of marketing. To them, marketing is marketing. Marketing to a prospect is all about generating a profit. Marketing to a customer is all about generating a profit. Well, the way you grow a business fast is by viewing the front end simply as a vehicle to generate maximum new customers, not as a profit generation tool. All of the profit in your business comes from the back end. The back end, all of the marketing that you do with existing customers, is where all of the profit is in your business. And so the main purpose of the back end is to grow what we call average lifetime customer value. Average lifetime customer value is really nothing more than the average amount of money that the average customer spends with you over the life of their patronage with your business. And so it's basically the average amount of money that a customer will spend with your company. Your goal on the back end is to offer more and more products and or services to customers so that you can grow the average dollar amount that the typical customer is worth to your business. Now, let me tell you how the A players view each, and I already really alluded to this. This is critical because you'll see that this view is very different from the way the typical marketer, the typical small business owner understands their front end, their back end, or really just understands their marketing in general. And so A players view the front end simply as a vehicle to acquire customers. And as I already said, not a source of profit. Your goal with the front end is, if you invest hypothetically $100 in marketing or in advertising, your goal is to generate $100 worth of new customers. It's not to generate a profit. The A players then view the back end, all of the offers and products and services that are presented to existing customers, as the real business that we're in and where all of the profit comes from. See, I want you to understand that the money in your business is on the back end. The most expensive activity in any online business is the acquisition of customers. That is the front end. And so our goal with the front end is to basically pay for your advertising, to break even, so that if you spend $100 or $500 or $1,000, if you invest any amount of money in advertising on the front end, our goal is to recapture that money while we acquire new customers. And so all of the profit then comes from the back end offers, because all of the costs associated with acquiring a new customer was taken care of on the front end. Now, there are three main objectives of your front end offer. And we're going to be talking about your front end offer in a module coming up shortly, where we talk about what's called the customer captivation offer. This is your main entry point offer that you're going to learn all about. Now, the front end sale, the front end offer, the offer that we're making to prospects has three objectives. First and foremost, it's to attract the right type of customer. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but when I say the right type of customer, it is a quality customer, a customer that has a deep interest in the topic, the content, the solutions that you provide. It's the right type of customer is a customer that has the highest likelihood of investing more and more money with you over time. Again, the back end. The second objective, of course, of your front end offer is to convert a prospect into a new customer. That is pretty self-explanatory, right? And so the goal is to turn prospects into new customers. And then the third objective, which is the objective that a lot of novice marketers don't understand, is that the purpose of your front end sale, the purpose of putting a new product into the hands of a brand new customer, is to set up the sale of your first back-end offer. In other words, is to create desire, create interest, create curiosity for the next product that you are going to offer to this new customer. And you're going to learn how to do this in just a little bit. But these are the three main objectives of the front-end sale. In this lesson, we're going to talk about what I call strategic front-end product creation. And this is really nothing more than designing your front-end product, your product that's going to be put in the hands of a brand new customer, so that that product fulfills the objectives of a good front-end product. So what are the objectives when creating your front-end product? Well, the first objective is that it fulfills on the product hook and promise. We already talked about developing your hook and developing your promise. Well, of course, the product that you now put in the hands of a new customer needs to fulfill on that. If you're developing an information product, if it is a content-driven product, well, of course, that content needs to fulfill on the hook that you presented in your marketing. And whatever it is that you are teaching, showing, sharing, whatever process, whatever method, whatever system, it needs to be designed, of course, to fulfill on the promise that you made for that particular product. The next objective is that it over-delivers value. And if you are presenting an information product, it needs to be stellar content. You've got to recognize that the front-end product is the first product that a prospect has invested in, right? This is a brand new customer that we're talking about. This is their first experience with you. This is their first exposure to you and your content. And when you understand that, the front end is designed to create a new customer so that you can plug that customer into the back end. In other words, so that you can make that new customer additional offers for more products and more value. Well, the front end product then needs to be stellar. It needs to be fantastic. It needs to blow them away in terms of the quality and depth of content that you are providing. The last thing you want to do is promise to deliver a certain level of content and then not fulfill on that. Because by doing that, you've basically ruined the entire purpose of the front end, which is to create a customer and to create a long-term customer. So you want to make sure that when you are putting a product in the hands of a new customer, that it is stellar content. That's why your front end product needs to be fantastic. As well, the front end product should exceed new customer expectations. That means that the look and feel, the layout, the entire experience with the content needs to exceed customer expectations. Your goal when designing your product, not just the content, but the actual look and feel of the content, the branding, the layout, the colors, the margins, etc., is to make sure that you exceed new customer expectations, is to make sure that you set yourself apart from everybody else in the marketplace so that customers see that they're not only getting stellar content from you, but that the actual experience with the content is just fantastic and that you are over delivering value, right? And we're going to talk about how you over deliver value later on in the six-figure funnel formula. But for now, I just want you to think about how can you exceed new customer expectations. The next objective is that you provide a stellar buying experience. And what I mean by this is that the actual experience, the process by which a customer places their order and then gets access to the content should be fantastic. There shouldn't be any gaps in the process. There shouldn't be any information that's left out. You want to make sure that the buying experience is fantastic. A great example of making this happen is going the distance when providing, let's say, a thank you message or a welcome message, using video instead of just throwing together a thank you page, having a page that is branded, that looks good, that provides the new customer with a great experience, rather than going with a plain white page that says thank you, check your email for information. It's all about, with this brand new customer, delivering a stellar buying experience. Now, if you are selling information especially, you also want to provide a stellar consumption experience. What I mean by that is, first and foremost, of course, the actual delivery of the information. So how the information is being delivered to them. In an ideal world, you want to give them the opportunity to consume your information in a variety of different formats. Give them the ability to listen to audio online, to download audio, to watch the video, to download the video, to download a transcript, right? Give them a fantastic consumption experience. Go the distance with the deliverables to help them consume your information, to help them go through your information, because it's going through your information, as you're going to learn about shortly, that not only gives them a great experience, but it allows you to set up the sale for your first back-end offer. It allows you to create desire for the next offer that you're going to present to this new customer. If they don't consume your information, if they don't consume your product, the likelihood of them buying the next product goes down significantly. So it's our goal when delivering a product to a new customer to do everything that we can to get them to consume the product and to make that experience a great one. The next objective of a front-end product is to demonstrate your expertise in positioning. Remember, there's a vast difference between a front-end product, a product that's delivered to a new customer, and a back-end product. A back-end product is being delivered to individuals that already have a relationship with you, that already understand your expertise, that already understand your positioning. Well, on the front end, because our objective is to create a long-term valuable customer, part of delivering that content is establishing your expertise, is establishing your positioning within the content. And so I really want you to think about, and we're going to talk about this actually on the very next slide, but I want you to think about when you're creating your front-end product, not just being in product creation mode, but being in both product creation mode and marketing mode. See, one of the big mistakes that lots of new marketers make is that when they're marketing, they're in a marketing mindset. And when they're creating product, they're in a product creation mindset. Well, the A players, when creating products, maintain both. They recognize that in the product, they need to deliver stellar content and to fulfill on the hook and the promise. But they also recognize that every product in a sequence, every product in a funnel, every product in a business serves a marketing purpose. And there's no more important purpose for a front-end product than to, again, establish your expertise and positioning to help set up the sale for your next back-end offer. And so we're going to talk about that on the next slide, but understand that it's, again, about establishing positioning. And like I've already said, and I've drilled this into you, that the objective of the front-end product is to set up the sale for your first back-end offer, the next offer that you're going to make to new customers. So let's talk about some simple techniques for setting up the back-end sale, or what is commonly referred to as pre-selling. These are the things that I want you to think about when you are strategically creating your front-end product. How do you pre-sell new customers on the next offer that you're going to make to them without ruffling feathers, without annoying them, without blatantly selling or blatantly marketing, right? How do you do that? Well, there's a couple of different ways to do that. Number one, simply making nonchalant, offhand comments about the next product and what's taught in that product or what you share in that product is a way to create curiosity and create interest. And so, even if you said something like, one of the things that I teach in my XYZ system is how to do ABC. Now in here, I want to talk to you about how to do A, right? And so it's a nonchalant comment about the back-end product, right? And it's kind of very similar to alluding to the back-end product. Often you might say something like, this is a topic that I go really deep in, or I dive deep into in XYZ product. But for now, what I want you to understand is this, right? It's just alluding to the back end product. You're not selling on it. You're not blatantly getting into the benefits. You're not pitching them on it. You're simply alluding to the back end product. I already talked about referencing information provided in the back end product, right? Talking about a piece or a puzzle piece that you talk about more in depth in the back end product and referencing that piece in the front end. So maybe you talk about, that you spend an hour talking about this particular topic in the back end product, but for now you want to give them a 5-minute overview of what they need to understand to get started. Right? That's a way that you're referencing information. You're referencing to the new customer the fact that there is a more in-depth explanation of this topic in the back end, but you're still delivering information to them that is of value in the front end product. Of course, referencing client customer results from the back end product. Now, this isn't just stating a blatant customer testimonial. This is, let's say you reference information from a back-end product. Again, you say, you share with them, maybe you talk about XYZ topic in the front end. and you say, now, this is really just scratching the surface. This is a topic that I talk about for 90 minutes in one of my other products called, ABC Backend. But for now, I want you to understand how powerful this is. I got a client, Joe Smith, who went through both this training and ABC Backend training. And within 1 month, he experienced LMNOP. And so please understand the power of this strategy. Right? You see how I did that? I referenced information in the back end, and then I referenced a client customer result or outcome that they experienced from that. It wasn't a blatant pitch. It wasn't a blatant testimonial. In fact, the way in that example, the way I just shared it with you, it seems like an educational piece. It seems like what I'm trying to do is to drive home the value of what it is that I just shared with them. But really what you are doing is pre-selling on this back end. You're creating interest, you're creating excitement, you're creating curiosity, and that's what we're trying to do. And finally, the last basic way of pre-selling is to give useful but incomplete extra information. Now, when I say extra information, what I mean is that when you give useful but incomplete information, it cannot be information that you promise to give them when they bought the front end product. In other words, you can't promise to tell them the 5 steps of XYZ and then only share with them 4 steps in the front end product, teasing them to buy the back end. You can't do that. That'll certainly piss off a lot of customers. This is extra information. This is if you promise to share with them how to, let's say, grow tomatoes, beautiful big red, tomatoes. And while you were talking about that, you also said to them, while we're talking about tomatoes, let me give you a quick little tip on how to grow, beautiful roses. Now, there are really 5 techniques to growing beautiful roses. I just want to share with you 2 of them right now so you can get started doing this. Boom. And so it's useful, right? Because it's valuable information about growing roses, let's just say, or something else that relates to tomatoes. But it's not information that you promise to give them in the front end product. And so it is extra information that you then that you give, but it's incomplete, and you reference the fact that you talk about all 5 in the the roses training, if the roses training was your first back end. Hopefully that makes sense. What this is doing is we are planting seeds in the new customer's mind for and about the back end without blatantly pitching, selling, or marketing to them. And that is how we set up or begin to set up the sale of the back end, the first back end in your sequence. In this lesson, we're going to quickly talk about creating your actual front-end product with the hook. And this all begins by reversing the typical process. See, when it comes to creating and designing and building your front-end product, you want to begin with the hook. You begin with the hook and the promise, and you build, name, and design your product from the hook and the promise. So this is vastly different from what the typical marketer does. The typical marketer will create a product first based on what it is that they want to teach, what it is that they want to convey, and then they will attempt to design their marketing and sales message as best as they can for the product that they've created. What you want to do is you want to create the hook, create the promise, and then create the marketing and sales message first, before you actually create the product. See, by doing it this way, you're able to craft the most compelling marketing and sales message possible for the ideal perfect product. Once you do that, your job is to then design, build, create the product based on the hook, promise, and the marketing and sales message that you've created. Now, let me show you some simple examples of how I've done this in a variety of different companies. This is a banner for a particular training product called the webinar intensification process. And this product was really created because there was a tremendous need among online marketers for getting attendance rates higher for live and evergreen webinars. I saw that there was a gap in the marketplace. I saw that there was a need for increasing attendance rates. I saw from the market that there was a problem with poor show rates, right? Poor attendance rates. And so because of that, I created this webinar intensification process. Now, before I actually created the training, I crafted the marketing message, the sales message, and I started with the hook. And the hook in this case, as you can see, is really right over here. This is the entire hook, right? And so the hook is that there's a secret subsequence known to just a handful of A-player marketers that skyrockets attendance to any live or evergreen webinar. And so what you can see is that looking back on our previous lessons, number one is that the secret subsequence is the unique mechanism, right? This is the portion of the product that actually delivers the results. The fact that there is a secret subsequence known to just a handful of marketers, that is the first part of the hook. The second part of the hook, as you now know, is the benefit, which is it skyrockets attendance to any live or evergreen webinar. And over here, right, is another part of the promise, or really just a simplified way of restating the promise, which is it shoots your webinar attendance through the roof. So promise, hook, unique mechanism right here. And then I named, and in this case, it was really Rich Sheffrin and I at Strategic Profits really had this name already, but then I named the product based on the hook and the promise. And so that's one example. Here's another example from one of the first companies that I started about 12 years ago when working with chiropractors. And I saw in the market that there was a tremendous problem that chiropractors were having with patient attrition, right? Patients were going inactive. Patients were leaving their office. And so I saw that there was a tremendous need to address how to reclaim inactive patients. There was a gap in the marketplace. Nobody was giving them a tool to do it. There were people in the marketplace that were giving them training or providing them with training on how to reactivate inactive patients, but nobody was giving them a tool. Again, going back to the competitive landscape, right? What we talked about earlier in module 1. And so I created this product, what I ended up calling the 5-day reactivation revenue machine. This is, many, many years ago, but this is still a phenomenal example. And so you can see right here that the big hook, if you will, is right that there's a copy and paste email sequence that brings back 56% of your inactive patients in 5 days. So number one, you could see that this is the unique mechanism. There were other people that were offering training on how to reactivate patients, but nobody was offering a copy and paste email sequence. So this is the unique mechanism. And then the promise, if you will, is that this sequence brings back 56% of your inactive patients in under 5 days. And you'll notice again, like when I talked about the hook and the promise, that it is specific. Specificity sells, vague generalities do not. And so over here, you could see in the pre-head, like I mentioned to you, that this calls out, it speaks to the target audience. So it's for chiropractors that have patients that haven't been in for at least 2 months, right? So remember I talked about the hook. If you're 56 years or older and you are behind in your retirement, well, this is if you're a chiropractor and you have patients that haven't been in for a visit in at least 2 months, this is for you. And then this is the main headline is really another way to restate the big promise and the hook. You'll see that it states the big promise because it makes the big promise even more specific. Take 3 minutes, send these 5 proven emails, and at least half of your inactive patients will call you for appointments, 100% guaranteed. Now, so right, this is, it brings in the element of the hook. Well, what is the hook? That there are 5 proven emails that will reactivate your patients, right? So 5 proven emails bring in this copy and paste email sequence, right? That is the hook, the unique mechanism. And then you can see how it's wrapped in a big promise right there. And so another great example. Final example, which is a unique example, is for a product that I created for chiropractors, where it was basically a book that was all about chiropractic, that was designed to sell prospective patients on chiropractic. And doctors could have their picture put on the book, their name on the cover, their name on the spine, their bio on the back. It was basically a pre-done book, a physical book that they got. And so in this case, what I want you to see is that this unique element, the hook, was that there is one chiropractic book that you don't even have to read, and it still brings you new patients, turns you into a local celebrity, and makes you one of the most respected chiropractors, right? You see the element of curiosity in here. You see the thing that makes it new, that grabs their attention, is that there's a book that you don't even have to read, and it brings you new patients, right? And so, well, what's that all about? Just as a side note, announcing conveys that it is new. You heard me talk about, when we talked about the hook, that it's got to be, it's got to convey new, freshness, right? And over here is the big promise portion, right? The promise. You've got the hook over here, that there's this book that you don't even have to read, and it does all these things. The promise right here, just give this 133-page book away for free and watch it bring you new patients. So there is specificity in here, 133 pages. There's also a curiosity factor, give it away for free, right? And it's going to bring you new patients. And then, of course, over here is where we are calling out to who this is for. This is for the chiropractor that would ultimately like to snap their fingers, have their own professional book published in just 6 days, specificity, with your name, picture on the cover, without having to do any work, right? And so you could see how this is just an example of a pre-head, a headline, and a subhead that conveys the hook and the promise. And so I created a book, I created a product that fulfilled on this, right? I wrote this first, and then I had it created based on this hook, based on this promise, which was based on what I saw was being offered to chiropractors and the need that I knew chiropractors had expressed. So how do you do this? How do you build your front-end product with the hook? Well, there's a couple of very simple things. Number one, as I already mentioned, you create the marketing and sales message first. You start with the hook and the promise, and then once you've got the hook and the promise, you create the marketing and sales message first. You're going to learn later on a method, a process, a formula for creating a VSL. We also have a cheat sheet on the VSL, as well as a cheat sheet on crafting your message for a long-form sales letter. But you take your hook and your promise and you craft the marketing and sales message first. Then you choose a product name that conveys the hook. So you saw that, for example, with the copy and paste email sequence, I called it the 5-day reactivation revenue machine, because that fulfills on the hook. The name itself conveys the hook, right? That in 5 days, what does it do? It works over 5 days. It's 5 emails. It's focused on reactivation, and it's a machine because it works for you on autopilot. And so you want to choose a product name that conveys the hook. You also want to build the product tagline around the promise. So the name conveys the hook, and the tagline for the product should be the promise. Now, when it comes to the deliverables of the product, you want to include specific deliverables, what the customer actually gets from you when they purchase the product, that fulfills on the promise. right? And so whatever is included with the product should be fulfilling on the promise. And so if part of the promise is that it's easy, it requires zero work, well, you don't want to include deliverables in there that require a lot of work. You don't want to have a lot of worksheets. You don't want to have a lot of steps. You don't want to have a lot of things that they need to do. And so you want to make sure that the deliverables are congruent with the main promise of the product. In the product, especially if it's an information product, you want to continually demonstrate how the content that you're teaching them, that you're showing them, the system, the process that you are giving them is fulfilling on the promise. So if the promise is that the email sequence will reactivate patients, well, throughout that product, I reminded them and demonstrated to them how those 5 emails go about reactivating those patients, how it works over 5 days, why it does what it does, why it's so effective. In other words, I demonstrated the results that they would get while I was teaching them, which ultimately fulfilled on the promise. And then finally, you want to design the product so that it's congruent with the hook. And what I mean by that is the look and feel of the product needs to be congruent with the hook. So if part of your hook is that it's underground, it's secret, it's, behind the scenes guerrilla stuff, so to speak, well, then you want to design the product so it's got that underground guerrilla look and feel. You don't want to design a product that is supposed to be underground, but then looks like a common book. So there needs to be congruence with the look and feel of the product as it relates to the hook. And so just make sure that you're taking all of these factors into account when you are creating your actual front end product so that you're building it off of the hook. Okay, so here's what we covered in module 2. We covered the difference between the front end and the back end, the purpose of both the front end and the back end, how the A players in marketing view each, how they view the front end and the back end. We talked about the 3 objectives of your front end offer. We talked about front end product objectives, the actual objectives of the product itself, not the offer. And then we talked about how to set up the sale of your first back end offer. And we finished by talking about how to actually build your product with the hook in mind. Here's what to do now. First, begin brainstorming ideas for your front-end product, taking into account marketplace sophistication, what the market has seen, what they're being offered right now, and begin brainstorming ideas for your front-end product based on your hook and promise and the elements that we talked about. Begin jotting down ideas for how and when you'll use the pre-selling techniques in your front-end product to set up the sale and create desire for your first back-end product, the first offer that you're going to make to new customers after their front-end purchase. And then finally, of course, begin thinking about what that first back-end offer and product is going to be that you will make to customers who, again, purchase your front-end product.